Hey everybody, this is Kara CrossFit Brindle here with our newest team member, John. We are all about financial therapy in this video, and John has some really interesting background and passions around who he wants to serve with our business. So, John, I'm so glad you're here on part of the team.
Hi, Kara. It's great to be here. Really, I'm so excited about all of this. My introduction into financial therapy came about in kind of an interesting way. I had started working as a volunteer through an organization called Catch a Fire, which is kind of a matchmaking service between business professionals and typically small nonprofits who are looking for strategic planning, budgeting, financial management type advice. And I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I noticed early on that on the financial side, what I would see is someone who's very passionate about their organization, hardworking, had built this up and was successful, typically through one or more series of grants. So they had funds coming in, they had hired a staff, and they were now this executive director and confronted with the requirement, the responsibility that they manage the finances of the organization. And I thought that my role would be didactic. I'd be teaching them how to build a spreadsheet, how to put all those things together.
Uh-huh.
And I quickly discovered that the biggest issue was their emotions around money. And initially, I kind of sort of was uncomfortable with that. But I was there to teach them about spreadsheets. I was a spreadsheet guy, but I was also a social worker. I had gotten a social work degree. I loved social work. It's a long story of how I drifted out of that through a series of steps. But I started using my social work training and saying, I really need to talk to these people about how they're feeling and helping them to get over this anxiety, this fear that was just kind of palpable in the conversations. Like, oh, I'm not a money person. I'm afraid of money.
Mhm.
And so I really turned all of that into much more of a counseling session than a teaching session. And what was really satisfying and thrilling for me was to see those breakthroughs where I would be giving people just the safe space to talk about how they felt about this financial responsibilities that they were taking on. I had I had one organization, one woman that I worked with, who I continue to work with, who we actually moved into her personal life. She was wanting to buy a house, and all of the same issues floated into that. She didn't understand any of it. She was scared of it. And so I did a lot of teaching in I think, a very supportive kind of way that you wouldn't get from your typical financial advisor, in showing her all of these different pieces, but also listening to her, all of her fears along the way. So for me, that has been really very satisfying and a very successful model. And when I learned about the Financial Therapy Association, what was that, 2 summers ago, I just was like, this, where has this been? This is what I want to do. So I had been retired for 5 years, and I made a decision. I just want to get back into this professionally because I think I have something to offer in this community. The other thing that I can add to this is my own personal experience as a became a business professional, went from being a social worker to being the CFO of what was a small nonprofit, and having all of those same fears of kind of the guy that said, I can do this. I understand budgeting. But then when I was actually confronted with it and sitting there like, oh, everybody's depending on me to put all these numbers together,
A lot
there
of
were
pressure.
days where, yeah, there were days where I don't want to go into the office. I don't want to open that spreadsheet. I'm going to find 10 other things to keep me busy today so I can put that off.
Mhm.
And I had an experience. I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning. I tossed and turned. I couldn't sleep. And I was like, are we going to make payroll? I've been putting this off for months. I got up. I was in the office at 5 a.m. and I sat there for 3 hours and sorted it all out. It was a really telling moment for me. I could have used a financial therapist. It would have been a lot less stressful for me. But it was
Right.
really a moment where I understood all of the financial, emotional barriers that I was confronting and that I really needed to work at getting through them. So that's what brought me to where I am at,
Yeah.
at this point in my new career.
Love that. And this is why we're so happy to have you on the team because you have these pieces of lived experience and working with nonprofits, being a business owner yourself. I guess I can see where this really bridges the populations we want to serve. So do you want to speak to some of your ideal clients that we'd like to work with here in the future?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I see myself going in two directions. One is the small business manager, owner, that piece, as I've just talked about. The other bit of experience that I've had that goes back for about the past 20 years is in retirement planning. I sat down at one point, this was literally 20 years ago, and I had been drifting along like so many other people in the baby boomer generation where you don't have a pension anymore, you've got a defined contribution, it's going into a 401k, you've had a couple jobs, you've got a couple of IRAs sitting out there, you've got all this stuff, it's just happening, it's invested in stuff, you have no understanding of what someone set up for you because you just said, take care of it for me.
Right, right.
So I sat down about 20 years ago and said, I am going to put together a spreadsheet that captures all of this. And it was essentially a balance sheet that showed all of my assets, all of my different accounts, my mortgage, all of those different pieces, what was in the bank, what I owed, everything. So it's all my assets, liabilities. Here's my equity position. And I said, I am going to do this once a quarter.
Mm.
I don't want to do it any more often than once a quarter because that just becomes a tool to feed anxiety. I've got to be
Sure.
looking at this, churning over this. I'm going to do this once a quarter. So I feel like I have some knowledge. I know how this is going. I'm looking at it often enough that if I see problems on the horizon, I can start to adjust for that. I've done that once a quarter for the past 20 years without fail, and it has really served me well. And I didn't have to go out and buy any fancy application. It's just a very simple spreadsheet that I put together, and I
Yeah.
just keep tracking. And where that gets me to in terms of my ideal population is working with people that are marching towards retirement, people in their 50s, let's say, that marching towards retirement, they have taken a very passive approach to all of the 401k, all of that management, and it's just drifting along. There's a lot of anxiety that's associated with all of that. And I think I can help them to work through that. I do not give any advice about where to invest your money. That's not,
Right.
you'll never hear that from me. What I will help you with is having the space to talk about these pieces, trying to put together a plan, giving you some tools to deal with this, but to do this in a way that helps to bring down the anxiety level and gets you on a track to keeping track of all of this. I love to use the term, you manage what you measure.
Mm.
And if you're looking at this once a quarter, you start to form a picture of, okay, what's this plan look like? It takes getting over the anxiety, understanding that you have the skills to do this, and putting together that package.
Yeah. And so holding space for the emotional side and then the strategy. I love that. And I'm sure lots of people watching this video will be like, sign me up. How do I have that? So I guess one last question for you before we tell how they can connect with you further on this. What are some like words or adjectives people usually say describe your style as a financial professional, now financial therapist?
I think that people see me as someone who is very willing to listen and to explore.
Mm.
I think the key piece of this whole process is all about the questions. It's not about coming with the answers. It's helping someone to explore what are the questions that they need to be asking. I firmly believe that everybody has the answers in themselves if they can get the right questions. I think that people see me as someone who's very willing to listen and to guide basically through that journey. That's what I try to do. Is
Yeah.
my goal in this new career is to become the absolute best listener that I can be.
I love that. Yes. Well, and your social work background and now your financial therapy background, I imagine that those bridge really well for that goal of being the best listener you can be. Well, perfect. Well, for our viewers, if you have questions for John, John is available for discovery calls, which is basically a free 20-minute call where you get to know him, talk more about your goals and how that might be something he can help you with. So below this video, we're going to put a link for those discovery calls so you can jump on his calendar if you'd like to. Any last thoughts, John, for our viewers on this video?
Thank you for this conversation. I'm really looking forward to working with people, helping them on this journey.
Yes, and I can celebrate. Like, I'm happy to have you as part of this team and reiterate again that you work with all sorts of people of all different backgrounds related to retirement, future planning, individuals, and of course, small business owners, which is a passion point of us here at Crossway Counseling. So thank you, everybody. And we will make sure to put that link below so you can connect with John further. We'll see you next time.